So for this part of our discussion, ito, may tatlong items tayong pag-uusapan. Una would be the modification to the auditor's opinion. Okay, and then aside from that, modifications to the auditor's report without modifying the auditor's opinion. And then syempre yung supplemental information, okay, na related dun sa other reportorial responsibilities. Ano? Okay, so unahin lang po muna natin to. So what are the different considerations, no, when modifying the auditor's opinion? Okay, so yung dito yung sa topic natin na to, so i-address natin, di ba, when would it be appropriate to modify the opinion, and then how it will affect the auditor's report para po dun sa form and content. Ano? Okay, so again, yung sa modified opinion, expect mo na what if mag-issue tayo ng qualified, what if mag-issue tayo ng adverse, what if mag-issue tayo ng disclaimer of opinion. Okay? So, paano gagalaw yung auditor's report? Okay po? Sige, so simulan natin. So, sa modification, no, ng opinion, there are two main items being considered by the auditor that may result to modification of opinion. Okay, so ano po yun? So first would be, syempre, yung nature of matter giving rise to the modification. So ano ba yung dahilan, di ba? Bakit kailangan mag-modify ng opinion? Okay, so ano yung scenario or circumstances na na-expose si auditor? And then, ayan, auditor's judgment about the pervasiveness of the effects or possible effects on the FS. Remember, di ba, pagka material, qualified yan. Pagka material and pervasive, ayan. So either adverse opinion or disclaimer of opinion. Depende dun sa scenario. Nasusundan po ba? Okay, so ngayon, okay, so let us define yung specific term, di ba, na nagde-distinguish dun sa different modified opinions. Okay, so unahin po natin yung pervasiveness. Okay, so pervasive is a term used in the context of misstatements to describe the effects on the FS of misstatements or the possible effects on the FS of misstatements, if any, that are undetected due to an inability to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Okay, so pervasive effects on the FS are those that in the auditor's judgment, ito po, okay, letter A, yung unang item, are not confined to specific elements, accounts, or items of the financial statement. So, paano to? O, nagkaroon ng misstatement dun sa isang account, o dahil sa misstatement sa isang account na yun, yung other items na presented sa financial statements are also misstated. So, for example, overstated yung ating materially overstated yung ating ending inventory. Okay, so because of that material misstatements, yung current assets mo, materially misstated na rin. Yung total assets mo, materially misstated na din. Pagpunta mo dun sa income statement, o understated materially yung cost of goods sold, materially misstated na rin yung gross profit, yung income before tax, yung income after tax. Okay, so because of that, misstatements in the inventory. Nasundan mo siya. So, ganun yung parang may mali sa kanya, it made the entire financial statements materially misstated. Nakuha po ba? So, are not confined to specific elements, accounts, or items of the FS. Or, pwede rin naman yung letter B. Tingnan yung letter B. If so confined, okay, represent or could represent a substantial proportion of the financial statement. So, halimbawa, di ba? Materially misstated, isa lang yung materially misstated, pero yung inventory lang, for example. Kaya lang, okay, 80% of the total assets of the entity, okay, ay yung inventory. Okay, so tapos, ayun, in-identify, okay, because of that misstatement, yung entire FS na, okay, yung entire FS na mali na rin. Nasundan po ba? So, if so confined, it represent or could represent a substantial portion of the financial statements. Nasusundan? And then, panghuli, another example would be, ayan, in relation to disclosures are fundamental to users' understanding of the financial statements. Best example po nito, di ba, yung going concern. If going concern assumption is inappropriately used, di ba, hindi tayo namili between qualified or adverse, ano tayo, automatic adverse opinion kagad tayo. Naalala mo pa yan nung inaral natin yung going concern. Okay, so kasi considered po yun na pervasive. Okay, so pagka pervasive yan, okay, so either adverse or disclaimer yung pagpipilian. Nasundan? So once na ma-establish mo yung pervasiveness, ayan, you can easily identify the appropriate type of opinion na pwede nating i-express. Okay? So, ayun. So, as to matter, syempre, material but not pervasive. O, alam mo kagad to na qualified di ba? O, possible rin na material and pervasive. O, so, depende dun sa nature ng circumstances that will give rise dun sa modification. So, kung yung modification is caused by being the financial statements being materially misstated, so may mali sa FS, so anong opinion natin dito? Qualified or adverse. Yan. Qualified kung material but not pervasive, material and pervasive, adverse naman. Paano naman po kapag may scope limitation or there was an inability on the part of the auditor to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. So ano siya? Qualified kapag material but not pervasive, and then pag material and pervasive, disclaimer of opinion naman. Nasusundan mo siya. So yun do. So ito ang main na dapat na maintindihan lang natin is yung pervasiveness. Okay? Tapos, di ba, ito, once na ma-establish mo yung pervasiveness, you can easily identify yung type of opinion, type of modified opinion that should be expressed. Nasundan po ba? Okay, so ngayon, ngayong alam na natin kung ano po yung mga circumstances that will lead us to modify our opinion, paano naman makaka-apekto ito sa ating auditor's report? So, yun yung next na establish natin. Okay, so ano yung mga gagalaw doon, di ba? So, meron tayong mga basic parts dyan. So, ano ang gagalaw? So, as to the form and content of the opinion section shall vary accordingly when the auditor modifies the audit opinion. Likewise, the basis for opinion section would also be amended to suit the type of opinion being communicated. So, anong dalawang parts ang magbabago? Okay, yung opinion paragraph and then yung basis for opinion paragraph. So, yung title, addressee, same lang yun. Okay, same lang yun. Tapos, yung management responsibility, auditor's responsibility could be the same. Okay? So, specify lang po natin. So, unahin lang natin yung unang dalawang paragraphs. Ano po? Okay, so tingnan mo to. Una, sa heading pa lang ng opinion. Di ba kanina, okay, nung inaral natin yung unmodified opinion, okay, ang nakalagay lang doon, opinion. Opinion. Yung subheading niya, report on the FS, tapos opinion. Hindi nga nakalagay na unmodified opinion. Nakalagay lang, opinion. Tapos, diniscuss niya, we have audited the financial statements of ABC Company. Thus, in our opinion, okay, the financial statements of ABC Company presents fairly in all material aspects in accordance with PFRS. Okay, so ngayon, dito, tingnan mo. Yung heading ng opinion paragraph will vary depending on the type of opinion expressed. So, nakalagay din, qualified opinion, adverse opinion, disclaimer of opinion. Tapos, okay, dun sa opinion, yung opinion portion, di ba, dalawa yun, introductory, tapos yung sa opinion itself. Okay, sa introductory, pag qualified and adverse po, walang nagbago. Walang magbabago. Okay? Tapos, yung opinion paragraph, yung paragraph mismo for the opinion, di ba, dalawa siya, yung paragraph for the opinion, eto na yung nakalagay. In our opinion, except for, pagka ganon, qualified opinion na yan. Okay? Adverse opinion naman, in our opinion, because of the significance of matters described in the basis for adverse opinion section, the accompanying FS do not present fairly in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. Nasundan mo siya? So, ganun po yung yun yung magiging effect niya. Okay? So, ang nagbago sa opinion paragraph, una yung subheading, pangalawa yung opinion paragraph itself. Okay? Tapos, sa disclaimer of opinion, okay, so subheading, disclaimer of opinion, tapos, okay, kasi pag disclaimer, as good as, walang opinion na ina-express, di ba? We do not express a conclusion. Okay? Tapos, yung introductory paragraph mo, may portion doon na magbabago. Kasi di ba, ang common, we have audited. Pagka disclaimer of opinion, di ba walang audit na nangyari talaga? So, ang sasabihin niya doon, we were engaged to audit the financial statements of ABC Company. Okay, so, we were engaged. So, may engagement pero walang audit na naganap. Tapos, dun sa paragraph niya, ayan, because of the significance of the matter described in the basis for disclaimer of opinion paragraph, we have not been able to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to provide a basis. Accordingly, we do not express an opinion on the FS. Or pwede rin naman na we do not express an opinion, tapos ayun, because of the significance, so pwedeng mauna yung statement related dun sa non-expression ng conclusion. Nasusundan po ba? So yan yung una. Okay? Unang nagbago dyan. Tapos another example po yung nasa sa second line, form reporting under compliance framework. So in our opinion, in our opinion, FS have not been prepared in all material respects. So yun naman para sa adverse. Nasundan mo siya? Okay, so ayun. So kayang-kaya naman ma-identify yun. Right? Okay, next. Puntahan po natin yung basis for opinion paragraph. Okay, so yung heading niya, di ba kanina, basis for opinion lang. Ngayon, basis for qualified opinion, basis for adverse opinion, basis for disclaimer of opinion. Okay, tapos, yung first, magiging 2 paragraphs na siya. Kanina, di ba, yung basis for opinion natin, 1 paragraph lang. Ngayon, 2 paragraphs na. Okay, so yung basis for opinion mo, ganito po yung magiging itsura. So, basis for okay, kunyari, qualified opinion po muna. Okay? So, yung first, magiging 2 paragraphs na siya. Okay? So, yung first sub-paragraph, okay, nandito yung basis for modification. Yung reason, bakit siya nag-modify. Yung discussion, okay, ng dahilan, bakit nagkaroon ng modification of opinion. And then, yung sa second paragraph, okay, yung unang paragraph kanina. Diba? We have conducted our audit in accordance with PSA. Yung mga dahilan na ba't siya nakapag-express ng unmodified. So parang 2 paragraphs lang, nadagdagan lang ng basis for modification. Okay? Sa adverse, ganun din. Basis for adverse, pag basis for adverse opinion po, ayan. So una, ito, same. Discussion lang. Tapos yung second, same lang din. Okay. So, discussion lang nung modification, tapos dun sa pangalawa, okay, yung first paragraph ng unmodified opinion, yun rin po yung laman yan. We have conducted our audit in accordance with PSA. We are independent of the company. Ayun. So, ganun lang yung sasabihin niya. Pagka disclaimer naman, ito yung significant na magbabago. So, basis for disclaimer of opinion, ito 1 paragraph lang. Tapos, yung basis for okay, modification na, yung explanation na. Okay, so basis for modification. Tapos, wala na siya nung second paragraph. Okay, kasi hindi niya sasabihin na we have conducted our audit in accordance with PSA kasi walang audit na nangyari. Yun lang po yung concept niya. Diba? So, ayun. So, describe, sabi niya, describe the reason. Ito. Diba? Describe the reason for inability to obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence. Diba? So, di-discuss nila. Tapos, further, it shall not include a reference to the section of the auditor's report where the auditor's responsibilities are described. Diba? Yung conducting an audit in accordance with PSA, yung maintenance ng fundamental ethical principles, ng independence, okay? In compliance with ethical requirements, okay? Tapos, wala ng statement, diba? About the availability ng sufficient appropriate evidence. Kasi kung may sufficient appropriate evidence, di sana nakapag-express na ng conclusion. So, kaya tatanggalin mo na yung paragraph na yun. So, pagka modified opinion, 2 paragraphs yan kapag qualified at saka adverse. Okay? Pag disclaimer, 1 lang. Diba? Kaya lang basis for disclaimer of opinion lang, yung discussion. Okay? Dun sa yung original na unang paragraph sa unmodified, wala na yun. Completely tatanggalin. Nasundan? Okay, so yan po yung yan po yung mga significant changes sa form and content ng auditor's opinion, ng auditor's report kapag nag-modify ka ng auditor's opinion. Okay, eto pa, in addition to that, so may special talaga kapag kay disclaimer ito, additional consideration when the auditor disclaims an opinion. So, ano po yun? Okay, if the auditor disclaims an opinion on the FS, it shall not include the following in the auditor's report unless required by law or regulation. So, ano-ano po yun? Okay, yung mga pinag-usapan natin, okay, regarding 701, regarding 720. Ano po yung dalawa? Okay, KAM at saka other information. So, hindi ka pwedeng maglagay ng mga paragraphs na yan. Nasundan po ba? So, yung KAM natin, pang ano lang siya, pang unmodified, pang qualified, pang adverse. Pag disclaimer, walang KAM section dapat. Nasusundan po ba? Okay, so ayun po yung mga requirements, no, or additional considerations, okay, kapag ka nagmo-modify ng auditor's opinion. Nasundan? So, yan po yung magiging impact overall nung sa auditor's report ng modification to the auditor's opinion. Okay? So, so further, under the auditor's responsibility for the audit of FS section, okay, such section shall include only the following. Okay, a statement that the auditor's responsibility is to conduct an audit. Okay, kasi ano to, wala talagang audit na nangyari, so dapat ma-emphasize doon. Diba? A statement that, however, because of the matters described in the basis for disclaimer opinion, the auditor was not able to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence to provide a basis for an audit on the financial statements, and ayan, the statement about auditor independence and other ethical responsibility. So nandun na siya sa sa baba, di ba? Okay. So ayan. So next, eto naman, itong part ng discussion natin, these are additional communications in the auditor's report. Eto naman, this will not necessarily lead to modifying the auditor's opinion. Ano? So ano-ano po 'yan? So may dalawang items diyan, no? So ano po yung dalawang items? Emphasis of a matter paragraph at saka po other matter paragraph. So, anong pagkakaiba ng emphasis of a matter paragraph and then other matter paragraph? O, simple lang yan. Okay? Simple lang po. Basta additional paragraph to sa auditor's report. Okay? Ang pagkakaiba lang nila, emphasis of a matter paragraph yan. Kapag yung i-discuss mo dun sa additional paragraph is already presented or disclosed dun sa financial statements. Ano ba? Nasa page or nasa notes na. Tapos gusto mo lang i-heighten yung attention ng mga users, dinidiscuss mo ulit. So, emphasis of matter paragraph yun. O pagka other matter paragraph naman, ayan, other than those presented or disclosed. So, may gusto kang i-discuss, hindi yun nakadisclose sa financial statements, then tawag mo doon, other matter paragraph. Diba? Parang best example nito, yung halimbawa po, yung sa emphasis, going concern. Diba? Halimbawa, may material uncertainty, anong requirement ng PAS1 pag may material uncertainty kay management? Okay, dapat i-disclose niyo yun sa financial statements. O, dinisclose niya na. So, gusto mo pang i-highlight, emphasis yan. Kasi it was already disclosed on the financial statements. Nasundan mo siya? O, example po ng other matter paragraph, yung other information. Diba? May material inconsistency. Diba? So, may mali doon sa other information, tama yung FS. Okay? Well, syempre, hindi man i-disclose doon na mali yung nilagay nila sa other information. Ikaw yung mag-highlight nun. Nasundan? So, yan po yung pagkakaiba ng emphasis of a matter paragraph sa other matter paragraph. Okay? So, the inclusion of this paragraph in the auditor's report is under the conditions that the auditor would not be required to modify the opinion as a result of the matter. Kasi, kung siya yung dahilan, ba't ka nag-modify ng auditor's opinion, wag mo siyang ilagay as other matter paragraph or emphasis of a matter paragraph. Saan mo siya ilalagay? Ilagay mo siya sa basis for modification, wag sa other paragraphs. Nasundan mo? Okay, so, ayun. Next, ano pa? Okay, syempre, dapat wag ma-classify as KAM. Kasi kung KAM siya, dapat nandun siya sa KAM. Wala siya sa emphasis, wala siya sa other matter paragraph. Clear? Okay. So, ayan. So, if the above conditions are present, the auditor shall include the paragraph within a separate section of the auditor's report with an appropriate heading that includes the term emphasis of matter. Ano siya? Karaniwan after the basis for opinion paragraph. After the basis for opinion paragraph. Pero sa standards po, ano siya, sa totoo lang, it's a matter of judgment. Kaya lang, wala ka namang ibang paglalagyan kung hindi doon sa after the basis for opinion paragraph. Okay? So, karaniwan dyan, ano eh. Yung example na in-illustrate, pwede pong opinion, basis for opinion, tapos KAM, tapos other information, o tapos kung gusto mo pang magdagdag ng hindi pa, aside from KAM and other information, emphasis of matter, no? So, ayan. And then, include in the paragraph a clear reference to the matter being emphasized and to where relevant disclosures that fully describe the matter can be found in the FS. Okay, so, ayun. So, dapat since it is already presented dun sa notes, i-heighten mo yung users, directing them dun sa portion kung saan naka-disclose yun. Diba? And then indicate that the auditor's opinion, okay, that the auditor's opinion is not modified in respect of the matter emphasized. So an example was provided. Ito, we draw attention to note 20 of the FS, which describe the effects of a fire in the company production facilities. Our opinion is not modified in respect of this matter. Nasundan? So, yan po yung emphasis. Di ba? Naka-disclose sa note. So, dinedirect mo na lang yung mga users. Nasundan po ba? Okay. O, paano na po yung other matter paragraphs? O, sa other matter paragraphs, ito, the inclusion of this paragraph in the auditor's report is under the condition that, ayan, this is not prohibited. Okay. Tapos, syempre, hindi siya KEM. Okay. Kasi kung KEM, dapat nasa KEM section. O, ano pa? Okay. So, if the above conditions are present, okay, the auditor shall include the paragraph within a separate section with the heading Other Matter. Okay, Other Matter. Or, ayan, other appropriate heading. O minsan, Other Matter, tapos dash kung ano yung gusto niyang i-discuss. Ano pa? Okay, so, ayan. Next, example. Ito. The FS of ABC Company for the year ended December 31, 2019 were audited by another auditor who expressed an unmodified opinion on those statements on March 31, 2020. So later, i-emphasize pa natin yan kapag may mga comparative financial statements. Ano? Pero yan yung isang example niya. Another example, yun nga, yung other information. Diba? So, ayan. Basta ang concept lang, hindi siya nakadisclose dun sa FS na ino-audit mo. Diba po? Okay, so, ayan. So, anong requirement kapag ka magdadagdag ka ng EMPs at saka OMPs? Okay? So, may required communication po yan. Kanino? Kay those charged with governance. Okay, so if the auditor expects to include an EMP or an OMP in the auditor's report, the auditor shall communicate with those charged with governance regarding this expectation and the wording of this paragraph. Okay po? Next. Okay, so aside from that, okay, ito, yung mga supplemental information presented with financial statement. So, ito, part 2 ng other reportorial responsibilities or other reporting responsibilities. Ano? So, ano po yung mga example ng mga supplemental information and how it will affect yung ating auditor's report. So, common ha, sa lower portion siya after nung auditor responsibilities. Diba? Auditor's responsibilities. Okay, so there are instances wherein a company is required to disclose information in the FS that are not required by the framework, okay? So, but are nonetheless required by law, regulation, or standards, or may voluntarily choose to do so. So, examples niyan, okay, would include, ito, yan yung mga common na pwedeng maging part ng other reporting responsibilities sa practice, ano? So, disclosure requirement by BIR under RR number 15, series of 2010. And tapos, disclosure requirement by SEC under SEC memo number 2, series of 2012. So, mga examples lang to. Okay, so, and then, ito yung magiging effect niya sa auditor's report mo eh. Okay, so, when this information is presented, the auditor is required to evaluate whether it is an integral part of the FS due to its nature and the manner of presentation. The following are the responsibilities of the auditors depending on its evaluation of the supplementary information. So, ang concept lang nito, titingnan niya, integral part po ba siya ng FS, yung i-report mo, yung requirements sa other reportorial responsibilities. Okay, so, kasi, yun po yung makaka-apekto dun sa magiging presentation mo nung other reportorial responsibilities. O pag sinabi mong integral, yung mga items na nandoon, na nakapaloob doon, related dun sa items rin na nasa FS. Okay, so pagka-integral part siya, okay, pagka-integral part po, automatic yon. The opinion expressed on the financial statement will cover will cover the supplementary information. Okay, pero kapag ka not integral or unrelated siya, okay? Parang wala siyang hindi siya directly related dun sa mga items na nasa FS. Then, pag nire-require siya na mag-express pag nire-require siya na mag-express ng opinion for that matter, o kailangan niya pong gumawa ng opinion for that. Nasundan? So, pagka integral to the FS, covered yung opinion doon, covered na nung auditor's opinion. So, parang isa lang. Diba? Pero kapag ka not integral, ayun, baka kailangan niyang magdagdag ng opinion for other reporting responsibilities. So, ang magiging itsura niya, yung other reporting responsibilities mo, i-discuss na doon. Diba? So, nandun ka sa other reporting responsibilities para magiging 2 paragraphs siya. So, di-discuss niya kung ano yung reporting responsibilities mo. Tapos, pwedeng may opinion paragraph doon para doon sa supplementary information. Nasundan? Okay, so yan po yung mga possible na pwedeng makaapekto pa doon sa ating auditor's report. Aside from yung sa other information, sa KAM, di ba? Okay, so ito dito, modification ng auditor's opinion, modification ng auditor's report, and then of course yung effect ng supplementary information on the auditor's report. Kuha po.